Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of Catching-101 TV. Got a great guest today, a guy that I've known for the past year or year and a half or so, mostly through an online relationship. But we did develop an in-person relationship last year at Catcher-Con. When he came to Nashville for the weekend, we had a really good catcher conversation there. And he's one of the guys that I follow online. I like to see what they do. Today's guest is recently moved. He was in Florida and now he's in Dallas with the Dallas Patriots. You know him as Cheese from his Twitter handle and online as his persona, so to speak. But let's welcome today's guest, Jake Lindmeier.
How we doing? Thanks for having me, man.
No problem, man. Glad to have you on and talk catching for a little while. Like I said, I know we've been on some Zoom calls before. We got to talk in person at Catcher-Con a little bit last year, but this will be probably one of our first times to sit down and just talk, just you and I, in depth for an hour or so. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's not all the craziness of our Zoom calls late at night with all the debates going on.
No doubt about it. Most of those things usually started past my bedtime. I'm an early bed guy, so I was half asleep through those things anyway. But yeah, definitely looking forward to this. So Jake, man, glad to have you on. Every time we have a guest on, I give a short intro, but I'd like for you to kind of go through your background and just kind of let everybody know a little bit about your history and what you're doing now and kind of how you got to be where you are.
Yeah, so I'm from Central Wisconsin. That's kind of how Cheese resonated. Played a little bit of JUCO ball and then ended up in East Texas at Jarvis Christian College, and that's where it started. And then when I got out of playing, I spent a year at Kaiser with their developmental team down in South Florida and realized I needed a break from baseball to kind of clear myself from that player role as a coach, and I wanted to just see if it really was for me. So I got in the hospitality industry, did that for a couple of years, and then realized, yeah, I want to be back in baseball. So 2018, I was in Dallas, hopped on with TCS to end the year. It was a great opportunity. Found a organization out here that wanted me to help run it. Then the pandemic hit and we shut down. So I knew I could make money in South Florida. I knew my family would work. So we packed up and I joined the XL Baseball Academy down in Delray Beach. Phenomenal opportunity. I was working with college guys. I started with a 9U team. I had some high school guys. It was a blast. Then we realized, hey, Dallas was the right fit. So I put some feelers out, got hooked up with Logan Stout and the Patriots, and it's been just smooth sailing for the last 2 months. I mean, it's been absolutely great.
Well, that's good to hear. You know, I feel like a lot of guys I know, or guys and girls and just people in the baseball industry, you know, and I understand the pandemic hit everyone hard, but when, you know, sports and recreation, baseball, softball, you know, team sports completely shut down, it kind of hammered this whole industry. So definitely, you know, glad to see that you made it through and you bounced back and you're doing stronger than ever now with the new gig. So I'm excited for you out there and looking forward to see what you guys going and how you continue to build that program. But kind of before we get into the info and the conversation, I always like guys to share their social media handles. I know you're super active on social media. So in case somebody's not following you already and they want to follow up with you or maybe reach out to you, maybe tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, if you want to follow my baseball content, it's going to be on Twitter, but all my handles are the same. It's Jake Lindy, Lindy 2021. If you want to see my pictures of girlfriend and dog, you can follow me on Instagram too. I kind of keep that more of the personal side of it, but yeah, that's where you can find me.
You know, I do the same thing. I've recently started a different Instagram just for baseball stuff, but for the longest, I mean, for years and years and years, probably a decade, I just kind of kept Instagram as my personal, and there's pictures of the wife and pictures of the dog and pictures of me working out and all the fun stuff that probably nobody cares about, but it's kind of a personal release. So I know what you mean. That's definitely fun and kind of how I use it as well. But I am looking forward to talking catching with you. And one of the things that I think I want to spend the majority of the time with is really coaching youth catchers, because I know you have experience coaching older guys. You've worked with younger guys. From what I've seen of you, it looks like you're really passionate about working with the younger guys. It looks like you enjoy working with the younger guys. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. You know, I think a lot of times people we get caught up and I got to be, with the oldest guys and the highest level and this and that. But at the end of the day, it's about making an impact on players' lives. And from what I've seen, I know you really enjoy working with the younger guys. So that's where I like to spend the majority of the time, but I'd also like to kind of compare, your experience with older guys as well. So as we kind of get into it, what are your thoughts on kind of just youth baseball overall right now? If you had to, look at the landscape of youth or amateur baseball, what are your thoughts, when it comes to catching, start there?
I mean, for me, the issue I have with youth baseball is everybody wants that golden $10 ring, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's fighting for that. And like, I look at a kid like Connor, who's hopped on some of our Zoom calls. He's 9, 10 years old, catching 4 games in a weekend. The kid wants to be behind the dish, and you can't fault the kid for wanting to do that. But what point are you hurting his ability going forward into high school, right? So like our 9U team, when I was down in South Florida, we had 4 catchers that would ride for a weekend, and they'd all catch at least 1 game, full game. If it would be hot, we'd split the game in half, but they wouldn't pitch on top of it. And that's the issue I see at the youth levels is you have these great catchers, but typically they develop an arm, and now you want to put them on the mound after catching a game. And the body toll it can't take it. I mean, they're going to be fine. They're going to be sore and they're going to recover, but at what point don't they recover? But overall, like the youth, oh, go ahead.
No. I think that's a really important point. Just talking about how a lot of these guys, especially the guys that tend to progress, the guys that play a long time, maybe you're the best athlete on the team. Maybe you have the strongest arm, but you're really skilled behind the plate. I've seen a lot of guys like that. It is kind of changing, with the number of games people are playing, with the pitch smart guidelines. And it makes it really difficult. So managing two-way guys, is that something that that you'll have your guys do, or does it just have to be under a close eye? I guess what I'm really asking is, I get a lot of emails from parents that say, hey coach, we have a tournament this weekend. My son's supposed to catch, and he also gets to use as a pitcher because he has a strong arm, the exact example like you're speaking of. What would be your approach or maybe your guidance to parents who have a really athletic catcher who's young, that sometimes wants to get flip-flop back and forth?
Find a program that'll let them alternate. So if they're playing 3 tournaments, have one tournament be where they only catch, the next tournament be where they only pitch and play their secondary position. And then if they are going to be used after catching, hey, I'm throwing 20 pitches max. That's my limit. That's what I'm throwing. No question about it.
Yeah.
Because obviously that kid that's coming from behind the dish probably is going to be one of your better pitchers just because that's how it is. But again, that $10 ring, if you need one, I'll take it out of my pocketbook and I'll go buy 100 of them and I'll send one to you. Like if that's what we're doing. So it's not worth it to me. I mean, so the advice I would have is alternate it.
Yeah, I think that's good. I feel like a lot of people have this weight on their shoulders and this balance that we have to do everything. And I think some of that stems from as you get older in the recruiting landscape, where, oh my gosh, if I'm not playing in this showcase or this tournament, somebody else is going to go be seen and I'm not getting seen, I'm not getting exposure. And I think it's easy to relate that, to the guys who are in high school. But it absolutely still goes on at the younger levels as well, where now you have national organizations that they're posting stats on websites and they're posting on social media how the weekend went and who's the all tournament team. And it's easy to kind of dismiss that and say, it's not as important, look past that. But I understand there is some pressure from parents and players that age who want to be seen and they want the exposure, and they understand recruiting is starting earlier and earlier, and they're always trying to get a heads up, and they feel like, man, maybe I know we should alternate weekends, but in real life, it just feels harder than that. It feels like there's more pressure. So I think that's really good advice. Talking about finding the right program, because there's a lot of really good high quality programs like the one you're a part of. There's also some other programs. Everything lies on a spectrum. There's good and there's bad of everything. So I think that's good advice, really dive in and research the organization and how other guys have been used.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, I definitely like hearing about that. When we talk about the youth guys having these extended seasons and playing so much, not just playing multiple positions, but now these guys are playing, tournaments every weekend. I don't know how many games you played when you were growing up, but it's way different than when I was growing up and when I was in high school, 20 years ago or so. The guys play a lot more volume. So even when you're working with the younger guys, I know we still have to work on recovery. We still have to work on arm care and all that sort of things. But with the younger guys in particular, how do you have them take care of their bodies so that they can, continue to play these long seasons?
Well, for me, like when I give a lesson or I'm doing a workout at one of the practices, like I want to know, when do we play for last? When do we play next? Like, what are we trying to accomplish?
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I found at the youth level, and it's helpful for recovery, but it's also beneficial for their development, is a lot of our glove work is done on two knees. I'll put them down on two knees, and then I'll bring them to one knee, and then I'll put them on 2 feet. But a lot of our work is isolating the upper half, so they're not going to be as tired. It's not going to be as strenuous. And then the same thing when we're doing blocking, it's going to be with a tennis ball. It's going to be with an Incredible. It's not going to be that hard beating down that I watch on social media or I watch these coaches do, where it's, hey, let's go bang out 10 reps in 10 seconds and then go get a quick water break. And then we're going to go into another drill. It's like, they're getting better because they're at the field. They're not getting better because they're learning something.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's good advice. And one thing that I've kind of said for a while is I get emails or questions, hey, Zan, what's your favorite throwing drill? Okay. And I promise I'm circling back around to the point you made. But I always say that there's not a throwing drill. There's drills for your exchange. There's drills for your footwork. There's drills for your arm action. There's drills for getting backspin on the ball. There's drills for very individual specific aspects of throwing. But I don't just say, hey, this is one drill that covers all of throwing. I don't think it works like that. And so when you take the approach that, hey, when we're doing receiving work, we might be on 2 knees to take a little pressure off of our legs. I think that's a good approach. I think a lot of times, you don't necessarily have to be, wearing a guy's legs out to get in good receiving work. I think you can work on receiving when you're on 2 knees or on 1 knee. So I like that approach, which is a good kind of segue. As we're talking about being on knees, is that something you teach with youth guys? Because I know there's a big debate. We see it working at the big league level. We see stats that show certain guys are more successful and more productive when they're receiving on a 1 knee, stance. And some people aren't really sure, where does that trickle down? At what age should that start? And I'll be honest, that's an area I'm still kind of undecided in. I'm not sure if all the younger guys can do it as well as the older guys. Sometimes I think possibly, sometimes I think maybe they should wait until a little bit older. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that since you've worked with both.
I mean, I don't think there's a definitive starting point. I have 9-year-olds that set up really well on a knee. The thing that I found with the youth is they're very top heavy. So getting them to feel that balance point of 2 knees, 1 knee, feeling that center of gravity, feeling grounded, then putting them on 2 feet. I don't think every catcher should be on 1 knee. I don't think every catcher should be on 2 feet. I think they all should have at least 1 or 2 systems of both in the repertoire. So the sooner that we can figure it out, glove is king. We've had that conversation. It's going to be king. And that's one of the studies I'm doing right now with the youth level is, can we hyper focus which way we're blocking? Are they going to miss arm side as much as glove side, or are they going to miss one way a little bit more? and getting guys to understand it. One thing that, Texas is all turf, which is fantastic for us, because there's points that we can use. So I always tell the guys that I'm working with, the batter's box is yours. Inside the batter's box lines, I don't want anything past you, because number one, we got to protect the guy behind us. But two, that should be something that you can control. Then we can start sliding in and out. But if you can cover that 21, 22 inch mark as a 9-year-old, you're going to be able to widen that out as you grow up.
That's an interesting thought. And I like it when guys go out and do researches and studies on their own. And maybe it's a little premature, because I know you said you're still doing it, but I would be curious to hear maybe what your initial thoughts or your initial impression is about that. At the youth game, there's obviously way more balls thrown in the dirt than as you get older. I mean, you watch a big league game and certainly guys have to block and be athletic. But if you go watch a youth game, I mean, there's balls being thrown all over the place. You can even see that in high school games sometimes. So what are kind of maybe your initial findings or some of the things you're researching? Because I think that's definitely an interesting topic.
So initial findings, the high school level isn't much different than the college and pro. I mean, it's still well over 90% that they're blocking between the knees and pitcher's glove side. The youth levels, obviously I got out here and started it a little bit later, but the catchers that I've watched have to catch balls, like it's pretty much all between the knees, maybe an inch or two outside the body to the pitcher's arm side, but it's just lack of focus more than anything. So like some of our top teams, you watch the kids that actually get it a little bit, they're going to miss down to the middle and glove side, just because that miss down arm side is really tough to do.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good point, and I'm definitely be curious to see how that kind of plays out as you have a little bit more, time and reps and all that sort of stuff. But I agree. It seems like a lot of pitchers, they're going to miss the arms, they're going to miss down and into the arm side. So that's an interesting topic. I would love to know, what are you teaching guys at the youth level to block? As we watch older guys teach different things. Like I said, I want you to compare and contrast as you work with older guys. If you're working with a 9-year-old for the first time, or if you're working with an 18-year-old for the first time, particularly on blocking, are you going to treat them the exact same, or are there differences, or what are some of the ways that you would coach guys differently based on their age?
I throw everything at them first and see where we're at. I think at the youth level, we as coaches, and I've fallen guilty of it, we try and break stuff down too quick, and we coach them out of being athletes. Like I've had a couple 9 and 8 or 8 and 9-year-olds that love getting hit by the tennis ball. They think it's a game. So all of a sudden they're blocking really well. So if I have a kid that's struggling with the concept, maybe we'll start with them being a goalie and put 2 buckets up and nothing gets past you. I don't care how you do it. And then we'll worry about form as it comes into conversation. But I'm going to see what you do before I teach you what I think is right for you. Because at the end of the day, and it's my big belief with everything, if you don't believe what you're doing, you're not going to do it. And that can be for high school, college, pro, youth kid. If they don't think it's working and they're just trying to please coach, they're not getting better. Everybody can beat a drill, but they're not going to become better because they're doing a drill that they believe in versus, oh, well, coach just wants me to do this drill,
Well, yeah, and I like what you said about guys being athletic and you actually watching them before you're, making changes and making adjustments. One of the things that I feel like I've noticed, and it's probably always been prevalent, but maybe more on social media recently, that there's a lot of people I see that just harp on mechanics. And while I'm not going to say mechanics are not important, I absolutely think there's a time and place to teach proper mechanics. I also think that we have to let guys who can be athletic, who can move, who can react, who can adjust. And sometimes the mechanics just go out the window. We're not, let's be honest, we're not shooting a free throw. We're not in control of every variable in the situation where the rim's not moving, the free throw line's the same spot. You can bounce the ball 3 times if you want. When we have to block a pitch in the dirt or receive a pitch for that matter, it's always different. And while certainly there are pitches that are going to be in similar spots and pitches that, follow similar mechanical routines, it's not just mechanics. If your throwing mechanics are perfect, you're going to throw a 1.8, or if you have the perfect swing mechanics, you're going to hit 500-foot home runs. And I think that's one thing that's lost. I see that a lot at the youth level with parents and coaches. I'm not blaming people, but I definitely see that a lot in some of the Facebook groups I'm in, where there are people who are going and asking for advice. And a lot of times all the advice is purely mechanical, after watching one slow motion swing or one slow motion throw. And I think that's an area that we need to get to just as a community where, yes, mechanics are important. We need to teach mechanics, but also we have to teach guys, what to do when crap hits the fan, so to speak.
Well, I look at a guy like Hunter Pence or a guy like Tim Lincecum, right? It works for him. It's not detrimental to him. I'm not going to teach a kid to hit like that. But if he's hitting 500 for me, or he's throwing well and he doesn't have any arm pain, why am I going to change that? Because who's saying that at the high school, like, I'd let him fail before I change anything? Because if it works for him, I know guys at the high school and college level that swung ugly but hit really well, or played really well, but it wasn't the most orthodox thing. But why would you change it? You're having success. So,
yeah. Well, and again, I like correcting guys. I like teaching guys, but I also like guys to, like you said, fail on their own and learn. I read a book a while back, and it basically spoke about internal motivators are much stronger than external motivators. And when you can teach yourself on your own, this was good, this was bad, this is what fires me up, this is what gets me excited to play, versus just always hearing it from someone else. I think there's a lot of value in that. So, one of the things that I do like is I like having guys learn their bodies, learn their mechanics, their version of proper mechanics, and then kind of adjust and adapt, and just teach them to be athletes. I think I had some great catching coaches and great hitting coaches, but a lot of times when I've learned the most, it was when I was in the cage by myself at 10 o'clock at night, when I was just hitting and getting reps and trying to feel and watch myself on video. And I feel like that's something that's kind of missed nowadays, where I don't want to say coddling is the right word, but we try to over manage and micromanage every single aspect of these guys' games, especially at the youth level, where we just need to have them, give them a little bit of freedom to yes, go out and have fun, but teach them, but let them learn the game on their own as well.
well, the biggest thing that I'll say for the youth level, I just got back from Cooperstown last week, and it was one of the coolest experiences I had, even having to dorm up with 12-year-olds. Getting to know a youth mind is absolutely incredible. Like, you can tell who their parents are, and there's some, but a lot of them have their own personalities and own thoughts. Like, it's fun getting to know those guys. And if you're willing to take the time, like, I've had some pretty fun conversations with 9 and 10-year-olds about baseball, about God knows what else, but just letting them kind of develop it and let them come into their own personality. Watch how much more they trust what you teach.
Yeah, interesting. It's interesting observation. I would say you're probably 100% spot on, but I think that's probably something a lot of people, may not necessarily give an opportunity to and give a chance. So kudos for that. But speaking of that, and I kind of want to get back to comparing the youth guys and the older guys, as we're coaching older guys, or maybe some of the things you've learned from coaching older guys and you apply that to the younger guys, do you think the communication is there as well? I mean, do you talk with the older guys you coach the same as you talk with the younger guys?
The ones that can handle it. Some guys that need a full revamp of whether it be a glove path or a setup, like, I'll dumb it down to a 9-year-old level just because, hey, let's make this as simple as possible and then build off that. And then there's some 12 and 11-year-olds that understand the concept. And it's like, okay, let's see if you can understand this at a high school level, because you're going to be on a big diamond next year, or you're going to be on a bigger diamond next year. Let's get ready for it. Let's understand that there's bigger angles. Let's understand that the game is the same, but let's slow it down for you when the game speeds up.
Well, I love the point you just made, talking about guys changing and getting to the bigger fields, because that's another question that I get a lot from parents. Guys who are at that, around the 12U mark, whenever they change. Sometimes it's a little bit earlier or a little bit later, depending on where they are. But for the most part, around 12 is when they're going to, switch over to the regulation field. And I've got a couple of thoughts, but I'd be curious to hear, what are some things you've noticed, for the 11U guys that start to play on the big field for the first time? What are some of the things they struggle with, and maybe how do you help them kind of get over that?
Throwing is the biggest issue, just because the field's so much bigger. So I think you got to go back to your last episode and talk to Alan about it and let him talk about how to strengthen a 12U arm to get them ready for a big diamond. But just understanding that the game is going to be faster, but there's a lot more time. So that 13U year, I watch guys rush because it's such a bigger diamond, but then they don't realize that the runner has to run an extra 30 feet and they have more time. Catchers are going to have to be a little bit better blocking because pitchers aren't used to that extra 10 feet or whatever it is. So the biggest thing that I would say for kids understanding is, if your IQ is there, you're going to be okay, and fake it until you figure it out. But understand that there's a lot more time than you actually think you have.
Yeah. So I love that point, and I love where you're coming from with that, because I've seen a lot of it. I've seen as guys, they progress from the smaller field to the regulation field, and they have a hard time, like you meant, first thing you mentioned, throwing. They have a hard time getting the ball to second base in the air. So they want to, throw a pop fly down there, just, for ego, basically, because they don't want to bounce it, and they don't want to be the guy that has to bounce it. And that's one of the situations where I say, hey, it's okay to bounce it. Let's keep our mechanics the same. And I think what it boils down to is, let's teach them how to play the game the right way, like it's supposed to be played, because there are certain things that go on at that age group, especially with the field transition, that aren't going to play in the next year or two as guys get a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, a little bit faster. I see things, I hate to say they're taught incorrectly, but you see the game played the wrong way a lot of times when guys move up, simply because the runner does have to run much further. So now the center fielder might field the ball and try to throw the runner out at first base, which sounds crazy to a lot of people who are watching it, but I see it every summer. The guys are a little bit slower. It takes them a lot longer to get to first base. The game is just played differently, and it's going to be played differently than what you would see on TV if you watch the College World Series last week, or if you're watching a big league game this week, just because of the size of the field. So I think anytime we can talk, to the youth guys or to the youth parents about, helping them through that transition and maybe giving them some advice, I think we're always on to something good when we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the throwing goes, like, I'll show my kids video of college and high school guys doing drills where they're trying to bounce it to second base. If they're playing on turf, which we're blessed enough to do, use it to your advantage, because it's going to speed it up. It's going to get it there. So one of the drills that I like using is, if we're throwing to that 127 feet, start them right behind the mound at that like 75-foot mark, then back them up to 90, then back them up to 110, then have them throw the full baseline, and then have them throw it past the base, and just have them feel getting it there, getting it out of the hand. And when we get to that 110 or even 90-foot mark, when they'll throw it, I'll let it go sometimes, and they'll see it, and it'll short hop the base, or it'll hit the base, or whatever it may be. And they realize, I don't have to throw it as hard as I can to get it there. I just have to get it out of my hand.
Yeah.
So understanding the difference between pop time versus, hey, I got to throw this 130 feet is a big difference for them.
And as we're talking about that, this is kind of a segue for the parents and coaches as well. But one thing we got to do at that age, as we're teaching catchers that, hey, it's okay to bounce the ball. You don't have to throw a pop fly down there that has tons of arc on it. We've also got to work with our middle infielders because let's be honest, most times in a game between 10U and 13U, if the catcher bounces it to the middle infielder, if the middle infielder catches it or picks it, he's pretty good. A lot of times that ball is shooting to the outfield. So it's just kind of another thing to think about that. Yes, I know the people who are listening and watching are catching coaches or catching parents. But part of our job as a catching coach is also making sure that we work with the middle infielders as well. So, it's just one other thing I kind of always like to throw out there.
Yeah. I mean, our youth stuff that we did, if we were doing throwdowns, we wanted the middles involved with it, whether it be them catching it, watching flight, watching where it bounces. A big thing that I like doing is putting kids behind a net or a screen and having their glove on or a pad on or no glove and just watching them follow it. See a short hop, watch a ball bounce, learn where the bounce is going to happen and have no fear of missing it or getting hit. Like, you're not going to catch this ball, but I want you to see where this goes. And that's one thing that we do with kids trying to figure out velocity. Like, we'll set the machine up and have them behind an L screen or whatever down in the squat. And I just want you to get your glove there. You're not going to get hit. You're not going to get hurt. I want to just see if you can get your glove there.
Yeah. I think that's good because, like I said, as we're getting older, the pitchers are going to have more velocity and it's going to get more advanced as we go. One other thing, I want to get your thoughts, but one other thing that I want to mention is as the field gets bigger, a lot of times we also get bigger foul territory as well. So, a lot of times you're a youth catcher and you're playing on a smaller field and you may be at a city park and there's 10 feet behind the umpire to the backstop. And the first and third base dugouts are right on top of the field. And they're used to just watching foul balls, leave the ballpark. And now you're playing in a weekend tournament at a college possibly or a high school or wherever it is. And there's a lot of foul territory and guys aren't used to, oh crap, that ball like landed in play. Somebody could have gone and caught that ball or I should have gone after that ball. So that's another thing that I've noticed is guys just getting used to, yes, the distance between the bases and the mound, but also the distance outside the field to play. As well. Are there any other things you've kind of noticed, around that age group as guys tend to shift or kind of, tend to adjust? Maybe it's how they deal with the pitchers. I'm sure we get a few more balls in the dirt as the mound backs up a few feet.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing is I'm a fan of shifting. Obviously, I don't need 4 guys on one side of the infield, but I'm a fan of getting guys to read swings and learn how to do it. And if you can start to do it at a youth level on that smaller diamond, I've watched the guys that kind of really get it when they get to that 13, 14U level. And I think that stands out for a high school kid or a kid that's going into his freshman year. Hey, he can read a swing. That might put him on a field quicker. I think guys are going to flip positions a lot more. Like those big lanky kids that can't really run that 60 foot might speed up as they get to that 90 foot. So maybe now they go from being that dorky first baseman to, hey, he's a right fielder because he can swing it a little bit.
Yeah. Good point. Now you made a really good point there about guys reading swings and kind of learning the game, which the first thing that pops into my mind is always a conversation about who's calling pitches, so at some point, we have a lot of high school and college and travel ball coaches calling pitches. Then you kind of have some pushback, catchers that want to call their own game or guys that are fighting from the developmental side and we want them to learn how to call their own game. What are your thoughts about, letting youth guys call their own game and maybe how they should learn or how they can get better?
Limitations. I grew up calling my own game, getting in arguments with my dad as a coach. Hey, this is what we're doing. You don't have any say in it. And then I look at it now, like I didn't have the scouting reports we did at the high school level and the college level. I look at it as a youth standpoint. We don't either. The guy's either dead pull or he's not going to catch up to a fastball. So we understand that. But if you can give guys the understanding of, hey, let's talk through stuff. You get to throw 3 curveballs this inning, use them wisely. Everything else has to be a fastball. Or giving them concepts. Hey, if you start with a curveball, I want you to end with a fastball. And just teaching them how to call pitches rather than, okay, yeah, you can go call the game or I'm calling the game for you. I think that hybrid of, hey, this is what I think we should throw here. But at the end of the day, I was a pitcher growing up. I know my curveball is not on today. I want to sit fastball changeup. Well, coach keeps calling a curveball. Do you have the broad shoulders to go up to your coach and say, hey, this isn't working. Let me work fastball change today and use that as a setup. And I think that's the biggest issue is guys play scared and are scared to go up to coach and say, hey, I'm not feeling that pitch today. And that's where a catcher needs to step in if the pitcher's not willing to do so and say, coach, that's not there today. Hey, let me go until I fail. If I have a question or I think it's a situation, then I'll ask you. But if you're going to do that, especially at the high school levels where we have spray charts, Game Changer is awesome. But if you don't lock your stuff up, teams are going to have your mom's name, your birth year, all the fun stuff, including where you hit the ball, what pitches you swing at. Like, we can go in depth on Game Changer now, and thanks to them, but it creates and I've seen it done in programs where guys have all this information for travel ball at 15U. So if they're going to do that, now you have to go in as a catcher and learn, hey, if we're doing this, I need to know and create a spray chart or create a chart. Hey, this is what this guy likes to do. Can he run? Can he bunt? Can he handle the bat? Like, what is this type of hitter? And if you can teach them that, then yeah, let them call their own game. Because at the end of the day, my job as a youth coach and a travel coach is to prepare them for high school and prepare them for college. But they also have to know my job's not on the line, at least at the travel ball level. My job's not on the line if we lose. If you're developing, the parents are happy, my job's not on the line and it won't be. You go to a college and you're going 10-40, that job's on the line. So understand that they're going to want to have a little bit more control than I typically would.
Yeah. Well, I think you made a couple of good points there. I want to go back to the first one you made. And, I feel like talking about the pitch calling, a lot of people think it has to be all or nothing. The coach calls everything or the catcher and the pitcher call everything, and that's kind of it. And I feel like it's kind of a lost art, the hybrid method. I think particularly with the younger guys, I think there's plenty of good reasons to help them call the game, from the dugout. And there's plenty of good reasons to let them call their own game. For me, the best learning and teaching method is having a hybrid and a mix of both. So one of the things you said is, hey, you get 3 curveballs in it, so for the younger guys, I think that's a good approach that I feel like we used to see a lot more of that. And we don't see that much anymore. Now it's, I'm going to call it, I'm going to take over, or it's yours, you call it, and kind of go from there. But I definitely, I like putting some limitations, and I like guys having to work with certain restrictions. One of the things that we always tried to do in pro ball, it doesn't always work, but you would try to use only 2 pitches the first time through the order. And if, so instead of showing the first batter your fastball, curveball, changeup, we would try to go through with, fastball, changeup, and not introduce the curveball, for example, until the second time through the order. Again, it doesn't always work perfectly, but that was an approach to try to limit some things. It seemed to work well for us. So I like guys doing that. I think it's important that as coaches, we help them learn. I don't think we should just spoon feed them all the information and not let them start to think on their own and think in real time throughout the game. So I like giving guys some restrictions, but also some freedom and flexibility too.
I think coaches, especially at the youth level, have more value calling and controlling the run game,
Mhm.
holds, picks, that type of stuff than they do calling pitches. I would much rather see a youth coach control the run game and say, hey, you're going to be a 2-second guy this pitch, a 1-second guy this pitch. You're going to be a 2-look guy, a no-look guy. You're picking off here, learning the difference between a slide step and just a normal move. But learning the difference between a quick pick and a long move, like teaching them that is going to do more than you calling fastballs and curveballs, personally.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I would add on top of that, which you're exactly right, especially when we're talking about the youth guys, and a few minutes ago, we were talking about guys that moved to the bigger field and now they're throwing from 60 feet, 6 inches. What is the level of precision that pitchers have at 12U and 13U? I've seen coaches, partly because I have the wristband software and I talk to coaches about that all the time. And they tell me we want, 9 zones inside the strike zone. And then we want, low inside, low outside. And they have the strike zone divided up into like 16 different segments. And I kind of just laugh inside and say, if you think a 13-year-old can hit 16 different spots on command, like you've lost your mind. I mean, like you're a lunatic. I'll go ahead and put that out there. 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds do not have that level of precision. So if they can't throw it in the exact right quadrant or spot we want them to, what's the point of even calling it when their level of precision is probably less than 25%?
Well, even with that, like hitting's hard enough. And that goes into the setups. And I've talked with a couple of guys that were on our Zoom calls about it and setting up on the plate versus on the black and getting guys to understand, like, when we call a fastball outside, I don't need you all the way off the plate. Like, hitting's hard. And that's, I'll go out and say it. If you want to teach a hitter to be good, teach them how to hit an outside fastball and teach them how to put it into the left center gap or right center gap, whichever their pull side is. But get comfortable looking for that pitch, because high school and even college pitchers don't want to come inside. Mm-hmm. So, but understanding the fact that hitters are going to struggle with pitches, don't try and be perfect.
Yeah. I think that's good. Like I said, I think that's something that we have to kind of get back to teaching. Because I see a lot of guys that are trying to be perfect. And hey, man, at 12U and 13U, we want them to hit the ball. If they can put the ball in play, we got a good chance of getting the guys out. So I kind of like that approach. I think that's a good way to take things. And then you mentioned kind of scouting reports, and I like where you're coming from with that. Hey, if you want to call your game, you need to do a little bit of research on your own. And I've had this conversation a number of times throughout the years, who's calling the pitches. And I'll be honest, as a college coach, I completely understand why a lot of college coaches want to call the games themselves. And part of my reasoning for that is, or if I was to take their side, is they spend hours and hours and hours watching film, going over scouting reports, preparing for a weekend series. Where if you're a high schooler, or maybe you're at a smaller college, or you're on a travel team, whatever it is, a lot of times you're kind of just going into the game blind with no scouting report. And I think that's something we need to translate to the catchers, that, hey, if you want to call the game, that's fine, man. I'm all for helping you learn how to call the game, but just understand the roles and responsibility that come along with that. It doesn't mean you get to show up when everybody else shows up. If we can, find the game changer on a team we're going to play this weekend, then you need to go find the game changer, have some notes about those guys, have an idea how you want to attack them. And then, yes, we can always adjust it and make changes on the fly if we need to. But if you're going to be an elite game caller, it doesn't start just by showing up to the field when everybody else gets there to stretch. You have to look into it, and you have to develop your own scouting report beforehand.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I'll do, and even like our lesson stuff, drills are awesome and mechanics are awesome. But if we can talk about approach and understanding that, I think that's going to be more valuable for a kid, offensively, pitching, defensively, than I can ever work on a mechanic. Like, if I can help raise your IQ in a 20-minute setting, that's going to matter more than me teaching you anything with your glove or anything with your footwork.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right, man. I think you're onto something there. I want to shift gears a little bit. So we've kind of been talking about overall strategy, you know, whether it be changing fields or calling pitches or whatnot. I'd love to get into some of your favorite drills. A lot of times I like to ask guys, not that I think, you know, hey, these 1, 2, 3 drills, you have to do these, or you're not going to be successful. But I'd love to know what some of your favorite drills are that you like doing with some of the younger guys. And again, I'm opening that up to age group, anywhere between 9 and 13, 14, whatever. But let's just start with receiving. As you're working with young receiving guys, I know you earlier you mentioned, you know, starting on 2 knees, but even more specific than that, what are a couple of things that you really try to accomplish receiving wise with the younger guys?
Getting them to have a pre-pitch movement,
Mm-hmm.
and getting them to start with their thumb down. Getting guys to understand that we know you can catch. That's why you're behind the dish. Like, that's first 5 letters of your position. You better be able to do it. So now how can we receive well? So one of the big thing, like one of our big cues is keep the ball above your knees. So how are you going to do that? We're going to start below and work up. But I want guys feeling that out, back, and down, and then coming to go get a ball. I'm more on the flexion to extension side than extension to flexion. But getting guys to feel that. So one drill that we'll do is we'll have them start with their glove out. As soon as I go back with the tennis ball, I'll lob it in. They'll go down, and their goal is to hit the ball back up to me. Our goal is to have their move coming forward as the ball's crossing the plate. So getting them to feel how late they can be. They're not trying to catch it. They're just trying to pocket it and pop it back to me. And I have a couple of those videos on my Twitter handle as well. I'll post another one today just to make sure it's fresh on everybody's mind.
Yep, and I remember seeing that, and I like guys doing that. I think with younger guys, I think it is important to over exaggerate certain movements, especially when we're asking them to do something that may seem new or may seem unnatural, or maybe it's different than what they've taught before. So I'm definitely a fan of over exaggerate movements like that and working with the pre-pitch movement so that we can work through it. With the younger guys, as you're working on these movements, how valuable do you find, you know, showing them video? Most of the guys that you're seeing, you know, if you show them a big leaguer, if you have a video of a big leaguer doing exactly what we want them to, are they able to look at that and, you know, improve their game based off of that? Or do you reserve that a little bit later for the older guys? Or how much do you use video with the younger guys?
So, like actual video of big leaguers, I'll show them it, but I'm not going to really use it. One thing I stole from working with Eddie Rodriguez at his camp was delayed video feed. All of my lessons and camps will typically have 1 or 2 iPads at it with a delayed video feed, and they get to watch themselves. And I think that's absolutely huge for development. Because again, we can tell them and they can feel it all they want, but as soon as they see it, they're going to realize that wasn't it, or you turn it into a video game. And that's why, like, I look at a system like Hit Tracks or Blast Motion, like with the youth guys, turn it into a game, turn it into a video game, turn it into a competition, and have a few goals set in mind and let them go compete. And I am a firm believer that they're going to come away better, and they are going to grasp what you're trying to teach them by putting them in a game faster than they will by you just doing mechanics. Because at the end of the day, all of these kids have grown up with phones and tablets in their hand. So the quicker that you can put them into that situation, the better off they're going to be.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think that's 100% true. I mean, even with older guys, you know, just
Yeah.
doing drill, that gets old. You know, when you can have them compete against each other, or gamify the drill, or make it a point system, or whatever it is. Anytime we can have some sort of competition and add some energy and excitement, I think that's a good thing. I do want to back up for just a second. I want to ask you, because I know the question would come up, and I'll go ahead and have you answer it. I remember Eddie talking about the delayed video feed at Catching-101. I think he mentioned the app he uses there. Which app do you use for that? Because I know somebody who's watching this is going to want to know.
If you type in video delay into the app store, it's a blue icon with a V. The pro version's like $7. Pay it. It's worth it. You can delay it up into like it's almost like a minute and a half, I think now. But it is well worth it. There's that one, and then there's one with 4 boxes, different colored boxes. Both of them are fantastic.
Okay. Yeah. I will definitely, I appreciate you saying that.
Once we get off, I'll send it to you, because I'm on my phone. So I'll send you a picture of that one and then the other one that I've seen used.
Perfect. Perfect. Love it. Let's get into the blocking stuff a little bit. So we kind of covered a few of your receiving drills. And we talked about earlier, blocking, how it's not always just purely mechanics. But what are some of the takeaways, or what are some of the teaching points as you're working with younger guys who are trying to, get used to blocking the ball and get better at blocking the ball?
So one thing that I've changed is putting the hand directly behind the glove. I'll either have them put it straight up in the air, and we'll call them rodeo blocking. Being in Texas, they absolutely love it. Or I'll have them put it right behind their leg and have them just hold onto their leg and just show them that they don't lose as much surface area as they feel like they do, and they're not going to catch as much balls off the forearm. Mm-hmm. But as far as blocking goes, I try and tell them either catch it with your belly button or catch it with your glove. And we'll start just short, close, and having them feel glove between their legs, both hands behind their back, and just feeling catching with their belly button and really feeling that sink in. And the first thing I'll watch them do is they'll fall forward and they'll push forward. One of our big cues is be a pillow, not a wall. Mm-hmm. And they find it hilarious just because they're 9 and 12-year-old kids being told to be a pillow. But it really resonates. We try and teach them sink your hips back, not throw your shoulders forward, because as you sink your hips back and keep that angle, your shoulders are going to naturally go forward, but you create a softer surface. And the one thing that I've been kind of looking at with catchers is there's not a ton of movement at the big league level, and it, quite frankly, because they don't have time. But watching guys block, like they try and keep their upper half as still as possible. Mm-hmm. They don't really move it forward and back, so they keep that angle. And I think going forward, that might be something to look at is, are we really trying to curl it with our shoulders, or are we just trying to let it hit us wherever we are and just deaden it? Because, I mean, we can block everything, but that goes into the block versus control conversation that I don't care if you can block it. You need to control it.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think one of the things that's overcoached, in my opinion, is, what you mentioned, being able to control your body. I see so many guys go to block and they're falling over, and they've been taught, hey, we want to kill the ball. We want to direct it directly into the ground. It's got to end up right in front of us. And I completely understand. And I teach that we should want to control, like you just mentioned. But I think in an effort to do that, I think a lot of times we lose control of our body. We're trying so hard to direct the ball directly into the ground, or right here where we got guys falling all over the place. And when they lose body control, now we really can't control the ball, or we can't direct it. So I think that's kind of an important distinction. As you're teaching guys to try to control the ball, like you said, not use your words, not just block it, but to control it and keep it close. What are some of the things that you would do to kind of help them along with that? I mean, I used to like to gamify that as well, where we would draw a circle in the dirt. And I know that's a very simplistic thing that's probably been used for the past 50 years. But what are some of the other things that you teach like that?
So I teach straight line. I don't teach curl it back to the middle. So that circle's fun just to do, but it's not realistic anymore. Mm-hmm. I was taught curl it back, get it back to the center of the plate. But then when you think about it, I just blocked it back to the plate. So now I got to go run back to the left and then throw it to second, or whatever it is. So one of the things that I'll look at is, where are the runners and where can we miss? So I'll set up tennis balls kind of a little bit, probably 3 feet in front of them, and say, hey, there's a runner on first base. You can miss this ball to the right if you don't control it. So pushing the ball back to the center and pushing it that way, or pushing it left and getting them to feel, hey, I want to push this ball in direction. All of a sudden, when you teach them, hey, you got to push it somewhere, they start to deaden it, because it's not a push down. They try and do it with their hips, and then they deaden it themselves. But getting guys to understand the movements, I'll put guys on slide boards. That's one of my new fun things to do, and get them to control the body. It's very difficult to do as far as timing, because there's zero gravity. So you're just sliding forever. And then you'll fall over if you push too hard, and getting guys to control the body a little bit more. But the other thing, like I like paddle blocking too, and teaching them, hey, it's okay to use your glove. If you're an infielder and you're really good with your glove, why not do it? Because it's not going to go anywhere. So I'll give them the freedom to just mess around with it. We'll use the vector ball. Thanks for breaking my bank account, because I have that. I have the black blaze pods, but we'll do the vector ball blocking, where red's a no-go, green's a fast runner to second, blue's a throw to third, that type of stuff, and just kind of speed it up, reaction, control it, that type of stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you just take it one step further, which seems like it makes a lot of sense, but I think it's something that a lot of people don't do. They just say, hey, we're going to block. Here's 10 balls down the middle. Here's 10 balls to glove side, 10 balls to arm side, as opposed to, okay, we have a runner on first base. If we block and recover, we have to make a throw to second base. Or if we have runners on first and second base, now we have to block and recover and throw to third base. I think asking guys just to take it one step further helps them gain a lot of body control and a lot of body awareness as they learn to give the ball direction, and they learn to control their body and how the ball reacts off them. So I think just doing something, I say small, it's a small mindset shift, but I think it can have a big transfer over into the game, and actually seeing guys be able to control their body more, body up more balls, and then control it, and prevent guys from taking bases.
Well, and the other thing that I'll go with is, like, I look at coming up, I'm sure you did them too, the rapid fire blocks and the circle blocking, or whatever it may be. And to me, I'm not in the weight room when I'm trying to get better on my skill set. We can get better, we can get more athletic, but at the end of the day, if I'm working on my specific skill set, I want to be able to be in a position where I can receive. I want to be in a position that I can block. I want to be able to be in a position I can throw. And that rapid fire, you just can't do it. Now, if I'm in the gym and I want to do some rapid fire stuff, and I want to throw the shins on to block and then jump onto a plyo box, like, okay, I get that. Like, I get there's a place for it. I get there's a place to get stronger, faster, get used to moving with the shins on. I just don't think it is a teaching point anymore.
Yeah.
But it goes back to the conversation. A guy's going to get better being at the field. A kid is going to get better doing whatever you tell them to do, and you can take credit for it. But at the end of the day, are you harming them more, or are you helping them more?
Yeah. I think that's a really good distinction. And that's something that a lot of guys, I would say a lot of guys used to do. Some guys still do it. But I definitely absolutely think we should separate skill work from athleticism work. Like I said, if you're in the weight room and you want some of the athleticism work to mirror or resemble, position specific work, I'm okay with that. But I don't like being at the field and just block it. Hey, it's time for conditioning. Let's block 50 balls as fast as we can. You got to block 10 blocks in 10 seconds, and guys getting up and moving. I don't necessarily think that. I think when we're working on skill work, we work on skill work. And then if we're in the weight room, or if we're doing conditioning or whatever athleticism work to generalize, then we work on athleticism over here. And can there ever be a little bit of a crossover? There can be in certain situations, but for the most part, they're separate and they're very distinct. So that's a good point that I think a lot of guys need to hear, because I think, especially at the younger ages, I see a lot of that. I see a lot of guys doing the rapid fire blocking drills, and a lot of guys doing things that I don't necessarily think are really helping them as much as they possibly could be. So good to know with that. We have a little bit of time left. I don't want to take all your day, and I appreciate your time, but I do want to talk about throwing lastly, because anybody who's watching a podcast or listening, we've spoken kind of on the macro level about a lot of things. We got into receiving, we got into blocking. When you're working with your younger guys and you're teaching throwing, what are some of the main areas you're focusing on there? I know earlier we talked about guys who are getting to bigger fields, but what are some of the things that you feel like most of the younger guys need work? And maybe it is a mechanical thing, or maybe there's a drill that you really like to do, but what would be some of the things that you're going to work on with your younger guys that you've seen a lot of good carryover and transfer to the game?
I like getting them to feel connection with their back leg, or feeling how to drive into the back leg. So we'll do hop and holds where they'll get in their position and they'll go up and hold it on the back leg for a second or two. I'll have them down on two knees and swing their foot up and really feel a step into the ground and not just a roll up, but just feeling that 1-2 punch of getting their feet firing and keeping them behind the plate rather than taking 8 steps and then throwing it from 110 feet. That's the biggest thing that I see with the youth guys. And then as they get that footwork down, I like shortening the bases and just feeling them getting it out of their hand. One cue that we'll use a lot just to get them feel that feeling of sped up is get the ball out before your left foot hits. And they'll never be able to do it, but just speeding them up is going to, I mean, when we're practicing, I want them at 110%. I want them going too fast, messing up, fumbling the ball. We'll start with ball and glove, and we'll have them do their transfer. Then we'll do a front toss, and then we'll do it off a machine or someone throwing. But I want them messing up and feeling that, where did I mess up? Understanding, hey, this is how fast I can go. And then understanding it's okay to mess this up, because if I do it at 80%, yes, I can beat this drill, but I'm never going to throw anybody out. If I can do it at 100% when we're doing it and my 90% in game is sped up, then I'm going to have a chance and I'm going to have a shot. So I'll throw all the drills out that we've kind of talked about. I'll do another post today just to throw them out there, just to refresh everybody. And for the newcomers, sorry to follow me, but I promise most of my content is good.
No, that'll be great. But one thing you said that I love is you talk about shortening the bases. And it is funny, the timing wise, earlier you mentioned, so people who are watching this sometime in the future, the Alan Yeager podcast just came out a couple of days ago. We talked about throwing a lot. And he's a big proponent of throwing often, like throwing every day. And yes, you do your recovery protocols, but we need to build the arm. We need to throw. We don't need to baby the arm and treat the arm like it's fragile. We need to treat it like it's durable. So one of the things that I used to do some, and you do, is you would shorten the bases. So instead of just throwing the entire distance to second base, and let's say you can do that 2 days a week, and then you have a couple of games. Well, if you shorten the distance, like we talked about earlier, and then you brought back up now, where they're maybe only throwing 90 feet, it still gives them a chance to work on mechanics, work on their exchange, work on their footwork, work on the things that, that individual player needs to improve on. But it doesn't put as much stress on the arm as throwing the entire distance, or throwing, 20 throws to second, 10 throws to third. So it allows them to continue to get work in, but it also takes a little bit of stress off the arm as well. So I think that's a good one. And I think that's one of the drills that I feel like it's underutilized. I don't see a whole lot of guys doing that anymore, even though it's just a really good drill. It's no different than a pitcher on his off day throwing a short box or throwing a side work. So I think it's good. I think it's a really good takeaway for a lot of people. So, excuse me. So before we wrap up, is there anything else throwing wise that you think would be valuable for the parents or coaches who are watching this?
Yeah, I mean, I just got to watch and help out at Clay Cox's Infield U seminar the other day, and their throwing progression for the infielders are fantastic. And a lot of the stuff that infielders do, I think a lot of catchers can do the same way. I think a pitcher's warm-up routine should be, or a catcher's warm-up routine should mimic a pitcher's. But feeling that foot fire and feeling that transfer, a lot of good can come from catch play, and I think it's very underutilized. I mean, if you're coming in after you've thrown your long toss and you sit at 50 feet and you and a partner do 10 transfers each, it's 10 throws, but you just got 10 reps in, and you don't have to get down on a squat. You can just sit there and work your transfer. Catch play is so underutilized at every level. I think that's where we lose out the most.
So I absolutely agree. That is an area and a time that most people probably don't take advantage of. And I think it's probably been like that way for all of time since the beginning of baseball. Usually what do baseball players do during stretch and doing, long toss when you get your arms loose? A lot of times we're not as serious as we should be, or we're thinking about something else. Our mind is elsewhere. That's where typically most guys, I wouldn't say, really focus in during their stretching period or when they're getting loose. And the same thing when they're throwing with just the intention of getting my arm loose. And that's kind of it. We're not doing our footwork or doing our mechanics or working on our transfer and really taking advantage of that time. So I'm a big proponent of that. I think that's something that that we can all get better at. And I think it starts with the coaches. I think if you, as a coach, if you sit in the dugout while your players are throwing in the outfield and they're getting loose, they're going to do what they've always done. They're going to talk about whatever's going on or video games, or they're going to slack off during the stretch. But as a coach, something as simple as just walking out there, spending time with them, talking to them while they're throwing, I think we can help them stay focused in and help them to maybe get a little bit more disciplined about their catch play.
Absolutely. It's such an underutilized skill set. I mean, half the errors that happen are throwing errors. And how often is it because they didn't play catch with a purpose?
Yeah. I would be willing to bet a lot. I think a lot of that can take over. So, Jake, man, that's awesome. Like I said, we've been going a little bit over an hour. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I appreciate you coming on here. It's been fun talking, especially about the youth game, and I'm excited to watch kind of this next chapter as you move back to Dallas and see what you guys got going on out there. Tell me, is there anything else you have going on this summer? Any more camps or any more instruction, or what do you have going on?
Yeah, so we are doing one more camp next week, Tuesday and Wednesday. I've posted about it. I'll post again today about it. I'm working with Sheets at Georgia Gwinnett the 19th to the 22nd, and then we're finalizing the date for one more catching camp in August, right before all the kids go back to school.
Well, I don't know what's going on, but Alan talked about Sheets, and now you're bringing up Sheets. It sounds like Sheets needs to be the next podcast guest. So I'm going to have to get on him. And,
absolutely. Sheets. I mean, he's the man. So
he's making guest appearances on the podcast every week. I might as well go ahead and just make it official. So,
there you go.
Jake, man, that's awesome. Like I said, I appreciate it. I appreciate what you're doing and what you're doing to spread the word about catching for all catchers, but especially in the youth game as well. So definitely keep up the good work, and let's plan on talking again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.